Joni was rushing to a meeting at the office and got caught in a traffic jam. 2 seconds to make a decision, and he's already driving around to avoid the jam. A text message arrived on Joni's phone. Distracted from the road, he began to pull out his phone, which was perpetually lying around in the car, littered with all sorts of things. The next second, he hit the brakes hard. There's a little girl about 6 years old in front of the hood of his car, and to his right is a traffic light that's been going red for about 10 seconds. Joni got out of the car and ran to the hood. The girl was lying on the ground with no sign of blood. "Hey, why aren't you looking where you're going?" he said to the girl, shaking her a little by the shoulders. Joni took the girl in his arms. Good thing it was the back of the yard and no one was outside. And where did the girl come from? It was like she grew out of the ground. Joni put the girl in the back of the car. She was unconscious. "Hey, what are you doing? Come on, wake up. I have to go to a meeting. Do you hear me?" He shook her, frightened. The girl began to open her eyes and looked around. "Hello," the girl said very quietly. "Well, hello. Well, you scared me. Listen, how are you? Are you okay? No pain anywhere? Can you walk yourself home?" said Joni quickly. "Yes," the girl continued in a quiet voice. "Do you live around here somewhere?" the guy asked. The girl nodded. "Where's your mother?" kept asking Joni. "Mama's far away," the girl said calmly and quietly. "Is Mom at work? Is Dad at home?" began Joni. "Uncle, don't be angry, don't swear, but don't tell Daddy or he'll get angry," the girl said in a voice that was already quite strong. "I don't have time for your father right now. Okay, that's it, let's go home." Joni started to help the girl out of the car. The girl reached into her coat pocket and started looking for something, then held out her little fist to Joni with the words, "Mama said that when people get mad, they need something to give. So here." She opened her fist, and there was a big button with 2 holes in it and a smile painted on it. Joni quickly slipped the gift into his pocket and shouted goodbye. "Be careful out there. There are plenty of fools on the roads." The girl ran to the other side of the road, and Joni pressed the pedal to the floor and hurried to his meeting. As he ran into the office, he took off his jacket with one hand while the other searched the folder for the report he needed. He wasn't late, he still had 5 minutes to spare. He walked over to his colleague, Rose. His heart was pounding. He asked, "Well, how's the boss today? In the mood?" Rose replied that she hadn't seen him since this morning, but from the rumors in the office, everything was fine. Joni is an ordinary employee in one of the offices. He has a big day today. He is being considered for the position at this meeting, and they are planning to promote him. Joni really wanted the position. It's a new lease on life for him. He won't be an ordinary employee, but a manager. The meeting began. Something was decided, debated, asked and answered. Everything went on as usual. Joni's boss was an advanced man. He often went abroad to study, and he liked to have advanced people in his staff. After the meeting, the boss turned to Joni. "I'll decide on your candidacy tomorrow. I need some time. You have prepared well today. I want to look at your reports again in peace." Joni calmly walked out of the office. The position was his. He knew it. He had already seen the draft order for his appointment. His colleague Rose had sent him a picture of the order the day before. Rose was her own person in every department of the firm, and, of course, her long romance with Joni kept them both on their toes. Already completely calm, he walked to his office. "Joni, how are you?" someone called out to him. "More than fine," replied Joni, happily going over everything that had happened at the meeting in his head. The workday was over. Joni got ready to go home. It got warmer outside, so he threw his jacket on the back seat of the car and rushed home. No one was waiting for him at home. He is used to being alone. He is more comfortable that way. On the way home, he stopped at a store, bought himself everything he needed to celebrate his little victory. At the cash register, he started to pay and realized they had forgotten all the money in his jacket. He asked them to put his purchases aside. He ran to the car, grabbed his jacket. At the checkout, he stuck his hand in his pocket, and the first thing that came into his hand was a button. He looked at it and thought, smiling, lucky button of some kind. Then he pulled out his wallet, paid, took the check, and headed for the car. In his mind, he had already begun to celebrate his appointment. All evening, sitting in front of the TV, Joni spun that button and thought all about the girl. He remembered how his grandmother had raised him, because his mother, leaving little Joni to his mother, had gone off to conquer the big city and never returned. The next morning, Joni got ready for work as usual. He took his time today, because everything had already been decided. As of next week, he was no longer just an ordinary office worker. He was already the boss. Today, he decided to drive through the yards again, in case he would meet this girl. He even bought lollipops with smiley faces at the cash register. On his way out of the store, Rose called him. "Hi, Joni, I didn't call you last night. Listen, after you left the office yesterday, my boss called me in and said he was considering me for the job of department head. I was up all night. Joni, did you get dumped or something?" Joni listened and remained silent. This was clearly not the turn of events he'd anticipated, as if he'd been doused with cold water. "Rose, what are you talking about? Are you in charge?" The guy replied in surprise. "That's what I'm telling you. I think they've already got orders for you, and here I am. But he started it for me yesterday. You have a good record. You understand what responsibility means. And as a manager, you have good skills," said the colleague. "Skills? Rose, what are you talking about? I have a meeting with him this morning. I'm going to be scheduled. Are you trying to ruin my mood in the morning?" replied Joni, and hung up. Joni stood and thought about everything she had just told him. Well, what if it's true? She's so pushy. Suddenly there's no order, Joni thought as he got in the car. As he approached the rendezvous point, he slowed down at the traffic light. He searched with his eyes for where the little girl might be. He had to park and get out of the car. He walked 5 yards, and behind the bushes, he saw a playground. On the swing, a little girl was swinging something. Not far away, a man was sitting. From afar, Joni thought the man was asleep on the bench, leaning on the back. The man picked up a bottle of beer from the ground, opened it, and started yelling to the girl. "Hey, let's get home. I'm freezing to sit here while you walk around." The girl obediently stopped the swing, picked up her doll from the swing, and walked toward the driveway. The man got up and followed the girl unevenly. Joni silently watched everything that was going on, like something out of a movie. He wanted to stop the man and reprimand him, but Joni stood stock still, just watching them go into the entryway. He came to his senses that he was actually on his way to work, and that's where he followed. He couldn't get the scene he'd seen this morning out of his head. He even stopped to think about Rose's phone call and his promotion. That girl, the doll on the swing, that button. "Joni, your boss wants to see you," came over the phone. "Got it. I'll be right there," he answered quickly as he went. "Joni, do you know that I think you are a very efficient employee? Your department has these excellent numbers. I took a closer look at the report yesterday. I like your approach, but I decided to take my time. I want to keep an eye on your department, and consequently, you. That's why we're not going to give you a promotion order today. Do you hear me?" his boss said. Joni, already distracted from the morning, flew somewhere far away from his body into space. "Yes, I hear," he replied, after a while, confused. "You wanted to watch me work some more. Don't be angry," he said into the void, stood up, put the candy he wanted to give the girl on the table. "Mama said whoever's angry should be given the good stuff," Joni continued. "Joni, are you all right?" the supervisor asked, and thought to himself, this is more than a strange thing to do from a man who claims to be an executive. "Yeah, "Yeah, it's okay," said Joni, and headed for the exit. What a day, thought Joni, sitting at his desk. All was well, and yet all turned out well. Rose sat across the table from him, smiling snidely when Joni looked in her direction, and Joni was already thinking that she was actually going to be in charge instead of him, and it made him sad. The day passed in thoughts and suspicious glances, each time Joni caught himself thinking that it was not for nothing that he did not trust women after all. In the evening, he decided to drive through that yard again, and if he could, he would walk to the man, apparently the girl's father. After work, he got to the yard. It was already dark. No one was there. He walked over to the bench where the drunk man had been sitting that morning. A woman with a dog came out of the entryway. Joni wanted to ask her about the girl, but realized in time that it was too suspicious to take an interest in the life of an underage girl whose mother is nowhere to be found, whose father is apparently an alcoholic. He sat down on the bench and realized that his whole plan was somehow incomprehensible to begin with. Why had he come here? What did he want to do? A second woman came up to the driveway, and they began discussing something loudly. "Oh, that man in apartment 14 got drunk again this afternoon. I took Sally to my place. Elizabeth from apartment 17 called the police, and they took him away, thank God. At least the girl's getting some rest." "It's about time they took away his parental rights," her other neighbor answered. "And I hear the screaming in the daytime. I knew it was Jacob singing. Feel sorry for the girl. She has suffered. He's always drinking, and he's always having strange guests at his house." "You don't say. When I remember Maria, she was so nice and decent. She would always help me if anything happened. And this goofball didn't behave like that in front of her. But you see how it is in life. The disease doesn't ask how old someone is." "Oh, don't tell me. God forbid that for anyone." Joni listened, and the picture of what was happening was becoming even more incomprehensible than he had painted it yesterday. He came home in a depressed mood. A strange emptiness had formed. After all, she's a nobody, he thought to himself. And how many children all over the country live with parents like that? They ruin kids' lives. All night long he slept badly. It was the girl, the traffic jam, or the boss talking together with Rose in his head. Angry, he got up, drank half a glass of cognac, and lay down on the couch in the hall. He slept that way until morning. He got ready for work reluctantly. The story wouldn't come out of his head. He took his jacket from the coat rack, put his hand into the pocket, and pulled out the button, looked at it. Mom said, "Whoever's angry should be given good," he said aloud. Why that phrase doesn't come out of my head, I don't understand. He went to work. Rose loudly proclaimed to the whole office that as soon as she became manager, she would bring a case of champagne. Joni watched this circus spectacle and realized that it was time to look for another job. To work under the supervision of an ex is a dubious pleasure. After lunch, he took the afternoon off, saying he needed to get some household chores in order. A thought occurred to him this morning. He received an email from his boss asking him to prepare another report for this week, and he had to defend it again. Ouch. I'll do it later. It's only Wednesday. Especially since he took time to think about it. Maybe this is my last chance, Joni reasoned to himself. Yes, after all, it's not the only company in town. If they don't hire me as manager, I'll look for a new job anyway. And now I'm not going to get upset before time. Solve problems as we get them. Joni got into his car and took a familiar route to the yard where the girl lived. On the way, he stopped at the store, bought all kinds of food, sweets, fruit, hoping to somehow brighten up the life of little Sally. He walked up to the front door and rang the intercom, dialing the number 13 at random. The other side of the intercom answered. "Good afternoon," he said into the intercom. "I'm a representative of the volunteer movement Do Good," Joni began, making it up as he went along. "I've brought a bag of groceries for the family in apartment 14. Can you tell me when they'll be home? No one's answering." "So there's no one there," a woman's voice answered. What about groceries? Insisted Joni. The door was opened. Joni walked quickly up to apartment 13. The door was already opened. On the threshold stood the woman who had walked the dog last night. It's the first time your volunteers have decided to help. How many times have we written to various authorities, and when we don't have to, you're right there, the woman began indignantly. Can you tell me when the tenants of apartment 14 will be by? Joni was persistent. They won't be home anymore. Sally was taken by her aunt today. And that's it. The father's being deprived of his parental rights. Enough to spoil the girl's life. He's fed up with everyone in the house. It's easier for the whole building to breathe. The woman was indignant. What am I supposed to do? After all, a whole package was brought in. People collected, bought, brought to us, Joni began to say perplexedly. The aunt doesn't live far from here. You can even walk there. Only I can tell you the number of the house and the street. I won't tell you the apartment. Wait for them in the yard. Ashley often walks with Sally. Go ahead. Write, said the woman. Joni started to quickly write the address on his phone. Then he ran as fast as he could. When he reached the yard, he saw Sally walking on the playground. She was swinging a doll on the swing, just like yesterday. That's right, a doll. I should have bought some more toys. What about chocolates? Cussed Joni to himself. He suddenly felt uncomfortable approaching Sally. He looked around, looking for the aunt. There was a decent-looking girl sitting on the bench near the swing, not looking like an aunt at all. She was talking excitedly to someone on the phone. Is there any way you could not traumatize the child through all the instances without her? God, I couldn't take her away from her father, and now I have. So now you can't leave the child alone. Joni waited for her to hang up and then walked closer to her. Good afternoon. Ashley? He asked. Yes, who are you? Ashley wasn't really surprised. My name is Joni. I'm a representative of the volunteer movement Do Good. Sally's family was on the database of the disadvantaged, so I brought groceries, and here's a package. He held out the package to Ashley. Well, Sally, you're in charge of her now, aren't you? Ashley looked at the package, at which point Sally walked over to them. Joni turned to her. Hello, he said, smiling. Oh, Uncle, hello, the girl replied. Sally, do you know him? Asked Ashley. Yes, we met yesterday, replied the girl. The day before yesterday, Joni corrected her. Those were the circumstances. He began to justify himself. I knew right away that you're not a volunteer. What kind of spectacle are you making here? What do you want? Wondered Ashley. I don't need anything, Joni replied guiltily. I really just wanted to give Sally this package and make sure she was okay. Joni handed the package to Ashley. That's it. You've looked and handed over the package, interrupted Ashley abruptly. Thank you, Sally. Let's go home. Ashley, Sally began. Don't swear. Mom said whoever's angry should be given good. The girl reached into her coat pocket, but found nothing there. Joni quickly slipped his hand into his jacket pocket and gave the girl a button, given to her by herself. The girl smiled, looked at the button, and handed it to Ashley. Ashley took the button and turned away so Sally wouldn't see her tears. Let's go home, my good one, she said quietly and calmly. Sally waved her hand at Joni and said quietly, Uncle, I'm out of buttons. I went across the street to pick them up, but my father won't let me go there, Sally said, walking away from Joni. Oh, my name is Joni. You can call me Joni, just not Uncle, he laughed. The girl waved her hand in agreement and followed her aunt's hand. Good day, Joni thought, and walked toward his car. At the end of the week, Joni prepared a progress report. He wasn't bothered by the situation. He even joked with his colleagues that he would stay with them forever, even if he didn't get promoted. Rose tried to joke with Joni that he would have to put up with being her secretary. But all that suddenly didn't matter. Everything went on as it had the last time. Questions, answers, clarifications, opinions. Joni, tell me, what do you think? Are there events that can radically change a person or his life? The boss suddenly asked out of the blue. I think so. Certainly. Every event leads to some kind of change, Joni replied calmly. As you said last time, whoever is angry needs to do good. Does that seem right? Does that lead to change? The warden went on. Joni was once again dragged out of his body into the vastness of space. He who is angry must get good. That's the principle, Joni replied. Well, integrity in our work is a valuable quality. So does it lead to change? The supervisor persisted. In my case, it worked. And in yours? Joni took the initiative and looked at his boss. Well, at any rate, it didn't leave me indifferent. I thought then and realized that there was some philosophy in it, the chief began to reason. It's a very good move, which I hope you as department head will be able to bring to mind. The chief held out the order of appointment to Joni. Sign and proceed with the transfer of cases. Rose will take over your cases. I'll let her know now. Oh, and yes, thank you for the candy for my son, the supervisor added, smiling. After work, Joni drove along the familiar road. Just on the way, he turned off at a little store. He was bringing Sally a present. He was bringing Sally a small bag of goodies. And perhaps it was no accident that fate had brought him together with Sally and her aunt. Perhaps it will lead to something.
All right, everyone's presentations are done, Nick, the manager, said as he tried to move the discussion forward. Excuse me, I haven't. I recently found out something. Nick interrupted me and began to speak. There's apparently someone in this department who didn't graduate high school and is just a part-timer. Meetings should be for employees only. Absolutely right. His lackey, Mike, of course, agreed with Nick. I'm leaving. After leaving the meeting room, I started to shut down my computer. I noticed that an email had arrived, not in my personal inbox, but in the company's shared email. Thinking, there's no point in speaking up, no one will listen, I went home quietly. The next day, I heard a commotion from Nick's desk. He was staring at his computer screen, his face pale. Nick? Is something wrong? Mike looked at the screen with him. And he turned even paler than Nick. Why is he so angry? Knowing the reason for Mike's distress, I thought to myself, serves them right. My name is Adam. My mother passed away when I was in the 9th grade, and I was raised by my father. Well, you could hardly call it being raised. After my mother passed, my father changed. He drowned his sorrows in alcohol, and though he still went to work, he squandered our living expenses on horse racing. Because of that, I had to start working part-time as soon as I entered high school. Every month, I went to the convenience store with bills in hand that couldn't be auto-deducted from my father's account. Even though I endured it because I didn't want to be alone, I reached my limit in my second year of high school and dropped out. I found a live-in job at a distant inn. Thank you for everything. The day I left home, my father, still staring at the TV, spoke. Take care. That was our last conversation. Back then, 18 wasn't the age of majority, so I needed my father's permission to work, and I couldn't hide my place of employment. Yet, my father never visited me even once. I kept working just to survive, and before I knew it, I was 42. Years of hard work paid off, and I was transferred to the headquarters. I was thrilled to be recognized by the company, as I thought I'd be working in the field until retirement due to my lack of formal education. Listen up. Our work can change the future of our employees. Don't drag us down. On my first day after the transfer, Nick, dressed in an expensive suit, spoke sternly. There was a reason for this. Our inn was located in a prominent tourist destination, known so well that everyone in the state could sing its commercial jingle. At its peak, we had 5 locations within the state. But that was long ago. Due to financial difficulties and aging facilities, only the place where I had worked for many years and the original establishment remained. I was prepared to lose my job anytime, but now there was a glimmer of hope. With the rise of social media, the tourist area where the inn was located started gaining attention again. Depending on how hard the sales department, where I was transferred, worked, we could either thrive or be forced to give up this prime location to the new hotel chains continuously popping up. For Nick, who had switched careers from another industry to strengthen our sales, this was a battle he couldn't afford to lose. I understood why he had to be strict. I will do my best. Nick sneered at my enthusiastic declaration. Did you not hear what I said? I'm sorry. I thought I was listening carefully. Out of habit from years of customer service, I apologized reflexively, though I had no idea what had offended him. Someone was watching me with a smirk. In this department, there are those who are expected to excel and those who have been shoved here because they have nowhere else to go. You are the latter. It was Mike, the section chief. He's 7 years younger, at 35. But he was called to headquarters much earlier than I was and had been moving around within the headquarters ever since. I'm not jealous, but I can't accept that he's my boss. Graduating from a prestigious university, he has an unusually high pride and caused many problems as a newbie, making things very difficult for me when I was the front desk leader. When I found out Mike was transferred to the sales department a month before me, I was disheartened. Mike is right. With just a middle school diploma, there's not much you can do. Don't even think about achieving results. As if I didn't exist, Nick remarked, "I'm thirsty." Mike eagerly ran to the coffee maker. It seems Mike is Nick's lackey. I regretted being happy about my transfer to headquarters, wishing I had stayed on site forever. Send a direct mail to every company on this list by the end of the day. Nick only assigned me tasks that even a new graduate could handle. What? There are over 1,000 companies. You want me to send to all of them by today? Yes, if you and your fellow misfits split the work, even those with nowhere else to go should finish by today. I glanced at the employees typing away expressionlessly. They were worn out from customer service, only thinking about leaving on time, or were women reassigned after having children, with zero motivation for work. Even Sam, a new graduate from the same university as Mike, who was supposed to be among the expected achievers, had no enthusiasm for the job, having joined the company wanting to do customer service. I don't care what they say, I plan to quit any time, he said. Only Nick and Mike were highly motivated, making all the decisions between the two of them. I originally only wanted to work at the inn to survive and had no particular attachment to this job. I swallowed my words, thinking I had no right to reprimand them. About a month after the transfer, Nick told us with a frustrated look. To commemorate the 50th anniversary, we've decided to create a plan exclusive for one group per day. Originally, Mike and I were supposed to come up with it, but our president, Mr. Thompson, insists on hearing everyone's opinions. So, you all get a chance. As Nick explained, Mike began handing out prints. Make sure not to embarrass Nick. If your ideas are half-baked, you'll have to redo them. It seemed that they had printed his handwritten notes by Mr. Thompson, which included several questions and a section for free responses. It made sense why Nick had to seek our input, given that all responses had to be submitted to Mr. Thompson. We were given a week to think about it, and a meeting was scheduled to compile our ideas. My plan is to let guests enjoy both the old and modern America. Nick began the presentations. Guests would watch a master confectioner at a nearby traditional sweet shop make sweets in front of them. The welcome drink would be premium tea in a bottle. Nick's plan was certainly attractive. After his presentation, Nick called on us to present in the order we were seated. Just as I stood up for my turn. All right, everyone's presentations are done. Excuse me, I haven't. I recently found out something. Nick interrupted me. There's someone in this department who didn't graduate high school and is just a part-timer. He was likely talking about me. I joined the company as a part-timer and was made a full-time employee when I turned 20. That was 20 years ago, so Nick and Mike probably had no chance to know until recently. Meetings should be for employees only. Absolutely right. After that, Nick kept creating opportunities to solicit everyone's opinions, purposefully excluding me from speaking. The meeting unexpectedly heated up and went past the scheduled end time. A few people asked to leave, and the discussion continued with the remaining few. Still here? Normally, you'd leave in that situation. Though I had no attachment to the job initially, hearing kind words from customers made me want to make them happier. For someone like me, with nowhere to go, the inn was my home and customer service was my life. I felt pathetic about my current self. I'm leaving. I left the conference room and started shutting down my computer. I noticed an email had arrived, not in my personal inbox, but in the company's shared email. Thinking no one would listen to what I had to say anyway, I quietly went home. The next day, while preparing the DM as instructed, I heard a commotion from Nick's desk. In his haste to stand up, he hit his knee on the desk. He stared at his computer screen, his face pale. Nick! What's wrong? Mike, thinking he should be the first to rush over, approached Nick while still wearing his coat. He peered at the screen with Nick. And he turned even paler than Nick. Why is he so angry? Who is responsible for this company? Nick, more irritated than ever, asked, and Mike answered without checking. Probably Sam. Sam wasn't there because he was attending a morning training session for new hires. Nick gave up on getting angry and returned his gaze to the screen. They were looking at an email that arrived right after the end of the working day yesterday. Apparently, no one, including me, had checked it before leaving. The email was from a large company that used us for their annual employee trips. The president and executives of that company also frequently used our services personally. President of the company, Mr. Mason himself, had declared that neither he nor his company would ever use our services again. Well, some companies cancel their employee trips or stop using our services due to financial struggles. Let's just move on. Mike kept wiping the sweat from his forehead with a handkerchief. Knowing why Mike was so agitated, I quietly watched their interaction. Do you know how much revenue we get from that company? We can find other guests to fill the rooms, but we'll lose the banquet costs, gift shop revenue, rental car fees, and more. Moreover, the gifts were supposed to be prepared by the traditional confectionery shop involved in Nick's proposed plan. If it's known that we incurred such a huge loss at this critical time, Nick's position in the company would be jeopardized. Nick took a deep breath, seemingly trying to calm himself. All right, Mike. Go to New York right now and apologize to Mr. Mason. What? You're coming with me, right? I have urgent work to do. I trust you, which is why I'm entrusting this to you. Please. Mike, believing Nick's sincerity, agreed with a determined look on his face, saying, yes. That's Nick for you. Even if Mike went to apologize, Nick would shift all the blame onto him if the client didn't change their mind. Well, it was Mike's fault to begin with, so it served him right. About 3 hours later, Sam answered a call from somewhere and repeatedly apologized, saying, I'm very sorry. Everyone watched to see what was happening. After ending the call, he informed Nick with a weary tone. When Mike arrived at the client's company, he only made things worse, further infuriating Mr. Mason. He was demanding, get his boss here immediately. It was no wonder Sam was exhausted, dealing with such a call right after returning from training. What is that idiot doing? All right, Adam, you're coming with me. If sacrificing Mike didn't work, then I must be next. Normally, I'd want to refuse at all costs, but I saw an opportunity in this situation. If I can be of assistance, I'd be happy to join you. I obediently followed Nick, and we flew to New York. When we introduced ourselves at the reception, it became clear how serious the situation was, as the receptionist personally escorted us to the president's office. Angry voices leaked through the door, making both Nick and me uneasy. Excuse me. I'm Nick, the supervisor. I understand my subordinate has caused you trouble, and I deeply apologize. Nick, with his experience in the corporate world, knew enough to offer an apology before excuses. However, his customer service skills left much to be desired. I sighed as I saw Mike trembling like a small dog in the corner of the room. What kind of training are you giving your subordinates? Mr. Mason glared at Nick with a red face. The intensity of his gaze made even Nick take a step back. Regrettably, I joined this company only 2 years ago and was unaware of Mike's issues. I should have identified his shortcomings sooner. Indeed. I should have realized sooner. No sensible person would come to apologize and then give a lengthy presentation on the drawbacks of not using their inn. Nick froze, his mouth slightly open. Suspecting the worst, I picked up the documents that had fallen to the floor. It seemed Mike hastily prepared these documents on the plane, listing the disadvantages. Disadvantage 1: if you change the venue for the company trip, employees might suspect it's for cost-cutting reasons, leading to a negative impression. Reading it aloud half-jokingly, Nick snatched the papers from my hand and checked the contents with a furious expression. Among the stack of documents was a receipt from a nearby convenience store's copy machine. I felt a pang of dread, hoping he hadn't shown the receipt as well. What do you think he said when I asked what kind of nerve he had to do this? I'm very sorry. Faced with the dire situation, Nick must have thought there was nothing left to do but apologize. In a voice smaller than I'd ever heard from him, he uttered words of apology. He said, "I'm a Harvard graduate. I don't believe I said anything wrong. Mike, what have you done?" Forgetting his plan to pin the blame on Mike, Nick yelled loudly, even in front of Mr. Mason. "I didn't do anything wrong." "You're still saying that? Look at him." Mike pointed at me with a shaking hand. "I was assigned to headquarters in my 20s and now I'm a section chief. This guy only made it to headquarters at 42. Everything I've done proves I was right. So why are we losing the contract?" Having said his piece, Mike collapsed to the floor. "Of course. You were sent there because you had nowhere else to go." Mike never expected to hear such words from someone he looked down upon. He lunged at me, and Nick hurriedly stepped in to stop him. "Mr. Thompson told me Mike is a quick thinker, and to take good care of him." There's no way he was pushed aside. "Don't make things worse here." "He didn't say quick thinker, he said only quick-witted, didn't he?" I don't remember that part." I recalled the many troubles Mike caused when he was a newbie. When Mike was on the front line, his pride was so high that he never apologized to customers. Customer service, especially in our job, doesn't work alone. It brings both good and bad situations. If the front staff or housekeepers made mistakes, or the cleaning company didn't properly clean a room, one had to apologize to the customers regardless of personal fault. Mike, in such situations, would never apologize, insisting he wasn't at fault. This often angered customers, and as the front desk leader, I frequently had to apologize on his behalf. He caused complaints and disrupted operations, which is why he was quickly moved to headquarters. In departments where he didn't interact directly with customers, his quick thinking was beneficial and things went well. But it seemed his flaws were starting to show. Corporate reservations are supposed to be entered into the system by the sales representative. But a quick check yesterday revealed that more than 10 items were missing from the client's reservation. The handover document clearly stated what needed to be prepared. Why didn't you enter it into the system? Why do we have to give them special treatment? Filling rooms near the banquet hall, setting up all the food in advance. Specifying the brand of wine, they're too demanding. No wonder he always angered customers, I thought, feeling a headache coming on. Grouping them in rooms near the banquet hall is for our benefit too. It makes it easier for the staff to set up beds and serve breakfast since everyone's schedule is synchronized. As for the other requests, Mr. Mason suggested them to lighten our load. I didn't know that. Nick finally seemed to realize that Mike was the one who had angered the client. What did you say to them? I just told them we wouldn't give them special treatment anymore. We shouldn't waste effort on things that don't bring in money. I was utterly exasperated at his lack of understanding of customer service. Of course, we shouldn't comply with unreasonable demands. But carrying over successful practices from past stays makes customers feel remembered and enhances their experience. Good memories encourage repeat visits. That's part of our job. I looked down at Mike, who was sitting on the floor. In our job, nothing is a waste. Mr. Thompson likely moved you to the sales department, hoping you'd finally understand this. How do you think he feels now that you've failed to meet his expectations? Mike, tears in his eyes, fled the president's office. I was amazed he still hadn't apologized. You have it tough, Adam. It's okay, we're all employees of the same company. I deeply apologize for this disrespectful incident. Especially after all the care you've shown us. If it weren't for you, Adam, I really would have stopped staying here. When I heard you were moving to the sales department, I was willing to reconsider if you handled it. Seeing us talk so amicably, Nick's face contorted. Do you two know each other? Adam's service is excellent. I always requested him specifically. Normally, we don't accept specific staff requests, but we made an exception for Mr. Mason, adjusting my shifts accordingly. He had personally stayed at our hotel just before my transfer, and during casual conversation, I mentioned, I'm moving to the sales department soon. If I hadn't told him then, things could have been much worse. Please continue to take care of us. I look forward to it. On the return flight, Nick awkwardly offered me a can of beer. It's still working hours. Of course, I had no intention of forgiving him for a single beer. Nick might try to pin everything on Mike and avoid any consequences. While pondering this, a startling fact came to light. Nick, the tea bottles for the plan have arrived. I handed Nick a bottle labeled with our inn's name. They look good. What are you talking about? These are plastic bottles. I had assumed we would use the trendy, high-end bottling tea. But what arrived were ordinary plastic bottles of tea with customized labels. The only unique aspect was the label, which had the inn's name, making it look customized. Upon further investigation, I discovered that a substantial amount of money was set to be paid to the tea company. It was priced like bottling tea. Does this plastic bottle really cost $100 each? The tea inside is specially blended for us. The extra cost is for that. Wouldn't it be better to use another tea company? Or is there a specific reason we must use this one? As Nick continued to make excuses, I showed him a printed email. I informed the tea company's president, Mr. Mitchell, that we discovered irregular payments and he confessed. He said you two were high school classmates and planned to split the extra money. That idiot. Why did he confess? That's not important. You should worry about yourself, this could turn into a police matter. Opening the bottle cap, I suggested. How about calming down with this tea? It supposedly has a relaxing effect. Nick drank the tea frantically. In the following days, decisions were made about their fates. Mike was reassigned to the General Affairs Department, with no chance of transfer or promotion, as per Mr. Thompson's orders. As for Nick, since the payment to the tea company hadn't yet been made, he narrowly avoided legal trouble. Instead, he was encouraged to leave the company, and to avoid further complications, Nick submitted his resignation. Rumor has it that connections between HR departments have made it difficult for him to find new employment. Even though it was good to have those two gone, something unexpected happened in the sales department. Everyone became motivated and united in refining the 50th anniversary plan. In the end, my plan was adopted. We collaborated with the Tourist Information Center to provide personalized guides. The plan, tailored to the number of guests, was truly special for the 50th anniversary. Hey, is Adam's family coming to stay? I immediately booked that special plan for my family. Sam noticed it on the reservation list and quickly picked up on it. Yes, I'm inviting my father. That's great. I might invite my parents too. I lacked the courage to face my father just as Adam. But here, with the confidence Mr. Mason praised, I felt ready. The 50th anniversary plan was a perfect opportunity to reconnect with my father. I hoped to bring back the days when we could laugh together as we once did.